Gareth O'Shea, John, counterintuition.com. Do stop by. Tons of free podcasts and articles and links and bits and pieces like that. I want to thank everyone who's writing in and tweeting and sending me messages on Facebook. I haven't responded to all of them. I'm going to be doing a show coming up soon where I'll get on a couple of the lads, John D, TJ, Alec, and maybe some others as well, and we'll go through the comments. We might do like a once a week or once a month kind of a comment show where we just respond to comments. I think that'll be the best way of doing it. I don't want to do it on my own. I think that'd be a lot of fun if we all did that together. So do hang in there for that. If I haven't responded to you, we'll do that. So I just wanted to talk briefly about, if government is so bad, then how come, blah, 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 blah. I've been hearing, obviously by now you might already understand that where I'm coming from is that government is completely immoral, it's completely illegitimate, and it's really not my opinion. I mean, I would be careful in separating my opinion from absolute fact, but what I'm getting a lot of is, if the government is so bad, then, or no, here's the one. If a country with no government would be so great, then how come no country on earth has done it yet? Or today, or whatever. And of course, this really gets me going. At least it hasn't up until this point. But now it's really starting to bug me because, something I copped onto was the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. I'm able to, I took so much time in researching and rationally approaching this. I mean, this is years and years and years of applying logic to and reading. I mean, stacks and stacks of books, just tons of content, talking to all sorts of different people. We're talking thousands and thousands of hours of just sinking my time into, in order to determine what are the correct principles of living, what's universal, what's moral, this kind of stuff, honor, virtue, this stuff that you can universalize, and how I would be able to interact with other people with it, how I would be able to share it, how I would be able to justify it to other people and make sure it's not just my opinion. And what I get back is all these really, really emotional responses without any regard for reason, without any regard for the actual arguments I'm making. No science, no facts, no examples, just nothing. Just emotional responses. And I was so baffled by it and confused and just kind of like, why can't we just talk? Why can't you just reason with me? And of course, what I've come to the conclusion of is I'm a dummy. And here's why. So it's taken me this long to figure this stuff out, but what I've realized is everybody else already actually believes this, what I'm talking about. Let me explain what I mean by that with an analogy. So let's say you have this small neighborhood and there's a woman in our husband and wife in one of the houses, and the husband is beating the wife, okay? Now, one day she comes out of her house and she has a black eye and she bumps into some of her neighbours, and her neighbours are all like, hey, what happened to your eye? And she's like, I bumped into a door. And so she says, I bumped into a door, and they're like, sorry, it looks awful. I hope you feel better, all this kind of stuff. Now, the truth is, people kind of suspect already. They may not know absolutely, but they have a strong suspicion that it's not from a door, okay? The woman obviously knows it's not from a door, and the husband knows it's not from the door. Now, each of them have their own interest in preserving the lie, or at least not pursuing the truth. Okay, obviously the husband doesn't want to go to prison. He doesn't want people to have to confront him, so he will go along with the lie. Yeah, she's silly. She bumped her head in a door. How silly is she? And she goes along with it because she doesn't want another slap, which might happen because where does she go? She has to live with the guy, right? At least she thinks she has to live with the guy. She has nowhere else to go. She has no other friends and family. Maybe whatever. And let's imagine she has kids. She doesn't want her kids to believe that she's exposed them to this violent person, or even risk their kids getting hit by him. So she wants to lie to her children, okay, because she loves them, or at least because she loves the fake relationship they have, where the truth is she has exposed them to danger, and she's not doing anything about it now at this point. And again, not to be hard on the woman, but it is kind of a big deal. Obviously, the real ethical considerations with the man. I mean, he's the guy who's the bad guy. I'm not saying the woman is the bad guy, but in that aspect of lying to children about it, that's kind of a crummy move. But then everyone in the neighbourhood as well. I mean, this guy might be the guy who goes down the pub on a Friday night and buys everyone pints. Because typically these kind of violent people are they're kind of at the higher end of the social scale in the way that we do relationships right now. It's so messed up. It's from, the kind of upbringings that people have and from school and just the last, few centuries of how we've been doing things, is that psychopaths get to the top. Okay, mad people who are into domination, who are into expressing control over other people using force, they get on top. And this is how, and no one in the neighborhood is going to want to approach him on their own own, because he has the kind of clout to make everyone in the neighborhood turn against that person. So there's kind of a social pressure there. So everyone has an interest in keeping this lie. So everyone knows, to varying degrees, that something is not right with this situation. Now, here's me, Gareth, right? I roll into town and I'm bouncing down through the street, and, I peek in the window by some random accident, and I see the guy hitting her in the face, okay? And I go, oh my goodness, that dude is hitting her in the face. So I go on down, everyone I run into, I'm like, guys, did you see that? Some guy is hitting that lady in that house. The husband and wife are fighting it, but he's hitting her. And, I go down to the door and I approach the lady. I'm like, hey, lady, that guy is hitting you. It's not because you walked into a door. You made a mistake. You didn't walk into a door. The guy hit you in the face. And she's like, no, I hit a door. Will you shut up? And she would have an emotional response with anger. She would get angry at me. If I approached the people individually in the street, they would get angry at me because now I've called them on something that they already knew about. Okay, if I said it to the husband, obviously he'd get angry. And this is where the emotional response comes from. No, she's just a silly lady. She walked into the door. And she's like, yeah, I hit my head. What are you trying to do? Split this family apart? What are you trying to do? And she would get totally emotional. And everyone in the estate is like, yeah, leave them alone, man. Who are you anyway to be coming in telling them their business? And this is how it works. So me thinking I'm great, having had discovered this thing through all these years of, skipping around and looking and doing this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, wow, I have the answer. Here, everybody, listen up. And everyone's like, shut up. So they don't want to hear me. Okay. And that's why. So this is why I feel like quite a dummy, because everyone else was kind of in on it and going along with it, except for me. And I don't know why I was immune to it, but I'm assuming it's because I wasn't bright enough to cop on. But I would like to, I'm quite happy with that though. I'm not. I'm happy that that's how it worked out. I said all that to say this is why there's so many arguments for why people support the government. Okay, these are people who actively steal from you. Okay, they threaten to give. You say, give me money. If you don't give them money, they will put you in prison. If you resist prison, they'll shoot you. Okay, in every country on earth, there seems to be this unifying factor that there are a group of people who have no problem being violent and exercising violence on individuals or the threat thereof, and then there's a huge majority of people who will just go along with it because they're getting something out of it. But ultimately, by any one of them approaching the situation, they risk ostracization from everybody else. So if any one civilian comes up and says, hey, the government is bad, they could go to prison. If you agree with them, you could go to, you could say, he's just batty, he's mad. And you have all these excuses why the person's insane. And none of them are based on reason or evidence or arguments or facts. None of them are based on that. It's all just, he's just mad. So anyway, here's just a couple of the arguments that people have come up with that are just, what's so tragic is it takes a couple of minutes to debunk every one of these. But, of course, if that's not what people want, then they're not ever going to do that. Okay, so, they say stuff like, the government funds various things, or like, art and schools and different projects and funny. Government doesn't fund anything, okay? Government steals money. It doesn't make money. It doesn't have money. Government is completely 100% broke. The only money it has is either from directly stealing it from people or from borrowing it against future generations. And that just means simply printing it up and saying someone has to pay it at some point in the future. So government funding is not a thing. Government do not fund anything. It's stolen money. You can assume that money would have been would have been spent far wiser if it wasn't stolen first. And of course, split up into all sorts of different chunks before it gets back into the market. It's just ridiculous. So, government innovation. The government created the internet. I've heard Al Gore talking about that. I know everyone recognizes that as a joke, but it is commonly said that the government created the internet. The government did not create the internet. The government stole a bunch of money, stole a bunch of brainy folks out of the marketplace to create a system of distributing information that would survive nuclear war. It wasn't until entrepreneurs got involved that they were able to turn the internet into something that has revolutionized the marketplace and is pushing everything forward. But even the way it's configured is not optimal, and it's not optimal because the government rushed it. Because it was prematurely introduced into the marketplace by government. Okay, so you have welfare again. This is stolen money. They steal money from everybody. And then when some people can't pay their bills, they're like, okay, let's here, come in here, sign this document and we'll give you some back. It's like, what would you do? You stole that money in the first place. That's not welfare. Well, anyway, I don't want to go into that whole thing. And any one of these, I mean, there's tons of stuff done in it, but just from a logical position, it's very easy to just see the silliness in it. I mean, you can go either direction, whatever way you want to with these arguments. These are just silly arguments. Schools, hospitals, roads. There's a reason government build all this stuff. They have to append some kind of a use, to some kind of a practical use to create the arguments to defend them. Okay, so like with the woman who says I walked into a door. Now, of course, if the woman was locked in a padded room, and she was hit, she would no longer have the excuse that she walked into a door. She wants the excuse so that she can keep the lie going. People want to be able to make excuses to excuse their behavior. That's the whole point. However you behave, you need to have a reason. If I'm going to steal money from you on a consistent basis, then for you to not look like an idiot, to not look like a stooge to everybody else, you're going to have some excuse why I should do it, okay? And this would be, my taxes go towards paying guards, hospitals, roads, this kind of stuff. That's not true. Your money does not go towards that. If there was no such thing as taxation, the government would be exactly where it is today, because they just print the money anyway. They just print the stuff, okay? They don't have to tax you for that. Government would not shrink without that. Now, it's a different situation in Ireland. The way it's kind of set up is we kind of have to go begging to the ECB to print money for us. But it's basically the same principle. It's just that, different politicians are in lesser degrees of control in Ireland than they are the ECB. But we could effectively say the ECB is the Irish government. And then the point would hold. So it's not true. It's not true that your taxes pay for stuff. Sure, there's money taken from you, and that money is then used to pay for stuff. But in the absence of that taxation, in the absence of that money being removed from you, all that stuff would exist. And if there was no government whatsoever, all that stuff would exist so much better. I mean, it would be so much. I don't want to go into all the details, but I mean, just think about it, okay? You go down to your local grocery shop and you buy a loaf of bread and you take it home and it's moldy, right? You go back down there and you say, hey man, this bread is moldy, and they give you a refund, or they give you another loaf of bread, or maybe both. And they want you to be happy, right? And if they didn't, if they just said, okay, sorry, yeah, it's moldy. We're doing the best with what you gave us. You have to give us, another €2, and then we'll see what we can do. No one would stand for that. No, we're talking about a loaf of bread, okay? No one would stand for that kind of treatment if it was a loaf of bread. When the quality deteriorates on the product in the marketplace, right? You do not pay more money, you pay less or nothing at all, okay? So you say the government is providing education, or let's say crime prevention and criminal prosecution in order to stop crime. Crime is higher than it's ever been over the last, if you look at the stats, it's higher than it's ever been over the last 50 years. Violent crime, I mean, we're talking about malicious kind of crime, not kind of made up stuff like, smoking a joint in your own home. Again, I'm not an advocate of drugs or whatever, but if someone who wants to do that in their own home, that's their business. I'm just not a person. Personally, I'm not a fan of drugs. So that would be a made up crime. But I'm talking about the instances of violence and theft. It has increased. And what did the government say? Oh, we just don't have enough funding. You need to pay us more money. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. I mean, if you go to China, it's a great model. It's basically insurance, but they've had it historically, where you have a doctor and you pay them on a continual basis, a recurring fee. You pay them on a recurring fee while you're well, okay? As soon as you get sick, you stop paying them. Okay, so you're paying them to keep you well, and as soon as you're sick, you withdraw money. And you say, no, you can't have money. And of course, now it's in the doctor's interest to get you well. Not only that, it's in the doctor's interest to keep you well throughout the time you're paying them. So they constantly want to be investing in your health, maybe checking up on you all the time, saying, here, come on in, we'll do a checkup. You should eat this, you should do this. It would be great if, you're a bit overweight, or you have this symptom, we need to deal with it this way. Because their money is withdrawn when you're sick. Okay, that's basically the whole idea behind insurance anyway, but the Chinese figured it out ages ago. And of course, what we have today is not really, I don't want you to think insurance like we have today, because it's a whole mess of government regulation and red tape. It doesn't really work in the same fashion, but you can get the idea. You want to pay people while stuff is going well. You don't pay them when it's bad. So what you have is an incentive to make it worse, because you get more money when it's worse. But for something as simple as a loaf of bread, right, we would hold the shop accountable. We say, hey man, this bread sucked. There's mold all over it. I need a loaf of bread. And rightfully, they'll just give you out another one and say, hey, okay, here you go. And if you don't want it, if it's still not good enough, you get your money back. That's it. So how is it that we're able to go to criminal prosecution or the education system and say, oh man, the grades are failing, kids are stupider now than they've ever been. They can't read. They come out of school. They come out of college at the age of 25, and they can't clean a window. They can't read a book barely. I mean, these kids. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but they're not ready for the world. But why is it? And so the point must be then that there's some other factor. It's that we're not taking into consideration, because that's again, that this is the reasonable approach. You would have to explain why. Okay, so and again with the likes of schools and hospitals and roads, if it wasn't illegal to set up your own schools and hospitals and roads, then that would happen in the market. But it is effectively illegal. You need to regulate. You need to get through so much regulation and licensing and red tape that they say, if the government didn't do it, we wouldn't have roads. If the government didn't do it, we wouldn't have education. The point is, if we didn't have government doing it, we would actually have education. We would actually have functioning roads. We would have roads where people don't crash every second of the day because of really, really poor design layout, because of a poor vetting process and who gets on the roads. It's just so ridiculous that, okay, no, crashes have been, instances of crashes have been going down. But then the government will claim it's because we made people wear seatbelts and stuff. I mean, it's just nonsense. It's not true. It was already going down before seatbelts. And in fact, seatbelts are really for emergency services, so they're not scraping you up off the road with a spatula. That's to keep you from... And again, seatbelts only help in head-on collisions, where the majority of crashes are actually side collisions in most cities. So anyway, not to go down another rabbit hole there, but okay. So there's so many arguments against it, but of course none of it really matters until people want to believe the truth. But they don't want to believe the truth, like this woman with the black eye, like her husband, and like all the people around her. That's an entire community who don't want to believe the truth. They actually have an active interest in not believing it. Because what does it mean? What are the ramifications if I go ahead and believe this? People say stuff like, how come the richest countries on earth have the most government? Isn't it? I mean, couldn't you say? You could say, yeah, sure. You can see the correlation and say, well, they must be rich because they have such a large government, keeping everything in order. But you could also say, no, I don't know. This is just a little guess here, but this is just one potential answer, that if government are basically parasitic, because as we've established, they don't have any money, they have to take it from people, then whoever has the most money, that's where you're going to find the most government leeching off them, because that's where they get their money, right? So it's, again, I've heard this, tax might be bad, but I don't mind paying it, and look at the kind of country we live in. And they say it's because of the taxes. Well, no, it's correlation is not causation. That's a logical fallacy. You can't say that. You'd have to show how is it that and of course, I mean, it's just so easy to disprove in terms of the very fact that you have to pay it. If you have to pay for something, it means it's not overtly desirable. If I go down to if Tesco came up to, if my local grocery shop came up to me with a gun and said, you have to buy my bread no matter what, I would say there's something wrong there. The bread's probably not the best, because if it's the service that I would actually want, then I'm going to willfully pay for it. I'm not going to necessarily need to. And of course, again, the arguments come out. Well, you have the free rider problem. If people didn't pay for it, then you have a bunch of people who are benefiting from a system they're not paying from. So what? Who cares? Who cares if people are benefiting from a system? I mean, if you value it enough to pay for it, and that's the only way you get it, and what do you care if somebody else benefits from it? We're not talking about stealing. They get to steal it off you. You get all the benefit you paid for, and somebody else just happens to benefit on the side. Who cares? Who cares? People get free stuff all the time. That's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. But it's one of these lame excuses. I walked into a door. That's why I have a black eye. No, you're being stolen from. You're all being stolen. Everyone is being stolen from in every country on earth. The money is being stolen from you. And of course, you can make a lot more sense of this if you understand the nature, if you could break down society into basically two groups: predators and prey. And let me put a little of my layman science on this. Basically, for this, I would introduce the concept of the psychopath. Okay, the psychopaths are actually surprisingly common. 1 in 25 people are psychopaths. Okay, now that's a conservative estimate, so it's probably higher than that, or lower. I don't know which way. There are more psychopaths than that. 1 in 25, but 1 in 25 is, let's take the conservative figure. For the purposes of this, I just want to define psychopath as someone who is not capable of empathy. Now, this is a very general categorization. There are a lot more specific types of psychopath there, but just for the purposes of this, I'll go with the most general, which is basically a psychopath is someone who is not physiologically capable of empathizing. They were born without the ability to do it. And this is completely scientifically measurable. It's not a decision. This is something where they cannot empathize. It's like being born without a hand or a leg or without vision. They don't have the ability. They're born without the ability to empathize. And if you want more kind of technical stuff on that, I would recommend the Canadian researcher Robert D. Hare. He's done amazing work. He's been around for a long time, and I think he's kind of one of the most recognized psychologists involved in psychopathy. So check out Robert D. Hare if you want more on that. But basically, psychopaths cannot empathize. So in the same way that, you would view stuff around your house, like if your TV breaks, it no longer serves that function, you throw it out, it's no problem. The psychopath can do the same thing with human relationships. Now, it's not like Al Bundy type psychopath. It's not like going around cutting people up. It's simply... the only way I value this relationship is when I'm getting something direct out of it. It's very manipulative and it's very kind of self-centric. It's very self-centric. But it's not immoral in the same sense that if one of us, if I was to do it, I would feel bad. Okay, a psychopath wouldn't feel bad. It's not immoral to them. It's like I'm saying, it's people are like tools to them. So to achieve a particular purpose. Now, if you have that one categorization of person, and then you look at everybody, that would be the predator. Now, if you look at the prey is basically based on popular and common parenting practices today and for many generations. Parents are quite abusive towards children. Now, I don't mean in the sense necessarily sexually abusive or physically, full on like slapping kids around the place, whatever, but just yelling at a kid or commanding a child or just expecting a child to do what you say, just this kind of blind obedience kind of thing, where the parent is very much in charge and the kid has no recourse, has no ability to negotiate and so on. What you have is you develop in children. The extreme form is called hypervigilance, but you have scales up until that point where children can kind of almost, they have a sixth sense for what their parent is feeling. So let's say a mother comes in home from work and she throws her keys down on the table, and the first thing, like normally the first thing she would say is "Hi, honey" or whatever. Today she doesn't. She just throws her keys down. She comes in. There's something. The child immediately will notice something is up. Okay, so she's had a rough day. I better do something to diffuse the situation, because anytime this happens, the slightest mistake I make, I might spill a glass of milk or something, and she'll freak out. Okay, so I don't want that to happen. So the child might get up and go over and say, "Hey, mom, what's wrong?" or give a hug or something, and the parent might actually confuse this for love, and they might actually think their child is concerned for them. But the truth is the child is concerned for, they don't want negative ramifications to come out of this, because they don't understand the rules. Because ultimately there are no rules. The parents just kind of do whatever they want with their children, and that's how it is. And the child just kind of has to put up with that. So instead, a child will always try and prevent negative situations from arising from an early age. I mean, it gets kind of, you can go through these rebellious stages later on, but it's always with an understanding of how to push them. Like, they know what their parents are feeling, so they're always looking outwards. They're always paying attention to everybody else, and always wanting to kind of, they know what other people want, but they don't develop themselves, their own identity and what they want. Okay, personally, the child doesn't get what they want. So let's just imagine you have these two groups who grow up now and they go into the world and into the kind of structure that we have already. You've psychopaths who are looking to manipulate people and use people who will believe them. And then you have a bunch of, the majority of the people who are looking to prevent negative situations and always capitulating and always negotiating now in order to try and alleviate any kind of if you could look at it like the husband and the wife. The husband is a psychopath, the wife is like everybody else. She'll say stuff like, "I love him, I don't want him to get in trouble, I don't want him to go to prison, it's my own fault," all this kind of stuff. It's my own fault. Or as a group of people, what people will typically say is, we have the potential for criminal behavior at any time, so we need to have someone over us to protect us. Okay, and of course the psychopaths are waiting to take that role, and that's what a government is. A government is basically made up of psychopaths. That's what a government is. It's a relationship, and so you have these predators who are actually, it's like a different species. It's not like the same. It's not like we're all just people. We're all humans. There's a fundamental difference in the thinking, the whole interpretation of the world. The psychopaths think that everyone is manipulating everyone else, and anyone who isn't manipulating is basically just weak. They're too weak to do it. And then on the other side of it, you have, oh wow, these politicians must be so great. They want to stop, they want to stop hunger, and they want to help people with welfare, and they want to give our children education. but they're going to manipulate you. But the whole point is those are all just excuses for them manipulating you. That's why the money has to be taken by force. That's why they can come up with arbitrary rules at any time and put you in prison. And this is how it works. I mean, if you deal with you go to your grocery shop and you say, okay, I no longer want to buy from you. I don't like how your products aren't as good as they used to be, or I just don't want to do business with you at all. I can stay at home and it's no big deal. Okay. Now let's say you get in a car and you're driving around and you don't pay your tax. Well, they'll come after you. And if you resist arrest, they'll shoot you. They'll actually kill you. Okay. That's not crime prevention. That's a very, very different thing. So this is how it happens, and this is the kind of perfect storm where you have these two individual situations where you have the raising of the psychopath and the raising of the prey and the victims, and it's independent, and they all have their own reasons for thinking what they think. And then when they get together in society, you end up with government, and you end up with an enslaved class. It's a serving class who will have all these excuses why they need government, but the truth is they're afraid to confront it. For all sorts of different reasons, and ultimately they're quite justified, because when you look at what effect one person would have. Simply going out and saying, "Hey, something's wrong here," and then everyone just turns on him anyway. So it's the beauty of it is that it needs a substantial majority of people to turn it over, and it of course requires even an understanding on the part of people who want to make a difference that this is how these people are, and facing up to the reality that there are such things as psychopaths, and it's 1 in every 25 people at least. So. This is what your government is made up of. Now, psychopaths actually have a very practical function. They perform really, really well in ER situations, high pressure situations where you have to make decisions about people's lives and not live with the guilt of it for the rest of your life. So 2 people come into an ER room and you have the choice of saving one or the other. And a psychopath can just go, okay, this one, and no problem. Or we need to amputate a leg. Fine, I'll cut that off, no problem. And they won't feel it. They don't feel it. So there's a purpose for that. I don't think it's necessarily a defect if people understood it. And to parallel it, I mean, just to show you kind of an insight into the world of a psychopath, the business world is actually psychopathic. The business world, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, if you were to imagine the entire world being filled with psychopaths, there would actually be no problems arising from the fact that they're psychopaths, right? Because in order to manipulate everyone else is kind of aware of it, so they'll all just do business. I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to. When you're in business, you're not thinking of there's times when you can think that, okay, I'm going to help this guy out, he's stuck for money or whatever, a business partner or something like that. There's times for that, but really when it comes down to it, you're not going to sacrifice your business for somebody else. I mean, maybe to save their life or something, but not just some kind of empathy. Business is all about profit margin and benefit, and what do I get? If I give you this, you get this. That's what it is, and that's basically the psychopath's world. If you could imagine their whole world being like that, that's what it's like. So this is how they end up. I mean, could you imagine you have a group of people who are looking to fix the world's problems, and they're like, okay, we need to assign some people to be in charge, so that crime doesn't happen, so that we have education, all this kind of stuff. Of course you have psychopaths who are going to gravitate to that place. Anywhere there's vulnerable people, anywhere there's people looking for solutions to problems by handing power over. And you get rulers. That's where rulers come from. And what's really important to understand is that it's mutually exclusive. And this is what people don't understand about the kind of anarchism arguments. I hate using the term anarchism because people think socialism and communism. All that kind of stuff. I'm simply talking about absence of government, and that really means absence of the legitimization of force and aggression. There's a place for fighting, but it's only in response, okay? It's never legitimate to initiate violence, is basically what I'm saying. So government, for that reason, is fundamentally illegitimate because it claims to be able to do that, to take your money, to take your stuff, to take your car, to do all that kind of stuff without actually committing to any contract ahead of time. So you can either have rulers, bosses, people who can determine the law, or you can have law. It's one or the other. Okay, law is something that's universal. It's something that everybody has to be subject to, and for that reason, you don't need to have anybody in charge of it because anybody can kind of chip in and of course you would still have specializations. You'd have security forces without a government. There's no reason you wouldn't have courtrooms. There's no reason you couldn't have anything that the government provides. I mean, the very fact that they provide it doesn't mean that without it they wouldn't provide it. Still, people still want schools. People still want courtrooms. People still want policemen. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that businesses would provide instead, and of course be paid the correct way around, be paid for solutions instead of be paid for problems. So that's kind of how it would work. But if you have a group of people who can determine law, then you don't have law, right? You just have people who say, here's what's right and here's what's wrong, and then everyone has to go along with it, and if they don't, they go to prison. So that's not law then. You can't have law under that. Law is the most important thing to make everything work, to make society work, to have people freely engage, and with so many examples of it. Even now, with especially with the internet, you can see like people resolving disputes without any government involvement whatsoever on the likes of eBay, Freelancer, all these kind of sites that have escrow. They have third party arbitration agencies where two clients will pay them ahead of time. They'll agree, here's who we're going to go to if we have any disputes, and whatever they say is final. It's all completely contractually based and reputation based. I mean, if somebody made a bad judgment, it would be publicized all over the internet. I mean, this is just the simple stuff. All this stuff is so simple. These are not government services. There's no reason to have a government. It's like, the difference between obeying somebody and doing something because it's true and right. Okay. So if I step on top of a building, and a 10-story building, and somebody says, you better not jump because you'll die, right? I say, oh, that's true. I better not jump because I die. It's not because they said. I can compare what they said to truth, right? And if it's true, I go, oh yeah, okay, you're right. Now that doesn't make them a ruler or a boss. It doesn't mean I'm obeying them if I don't jump off. For the same reason that if they were to say, no, you should jump off, you won't die, and then I go, oh no, that's not right. Well, then that's not. You see, that's me still comparing what they're saying against reason. So if a government agency says murder is wrong, I already know that. I already know murder is wrong. I'm not going to do that, right? So obedience and truth are separate. They're in different. You have one or the other. You have one or the other. Okay. You don't have both. And rulers and rules are also exclusive. You can't mutually exclusive. You can't have one and the other. If you have rulers, or you have rules. You have government or you have law. You don't have both. You can't have both. It's logical, complete impossibility to have both. You hear so much about people talking about, the political solution. Maybe we need to lower taxes. We need to do this, that, and the other. You're basically, when people talk about lowering taxes and people talk about less government, small government, we need to keep government small. All they're doing is saying, we need small slavery. We need less slavery. We need less rape. But we still rape. Okay, so how do we most effectively rape people? How do we most effectively enslave people on a very small scale? Like, that's what's being said. So we're in a very early stage of this kind of discussion, because even people in the movement towards freedom, towards liberty, towards talking about a world where we can actually disincentivize violence and aggression and theft and all the bad stuff, we have, the majority of them are just talking about scaling it back to a level that's possible to do and not have, not risk economic calamity, which is coming very soon. So anyway, so, people talking about lower taxes or this party is better than that party and this kind of stuff, you're just debating over. I mean, this is stuff that people did debate over slavery before. You can read, manuscripts of people talking about this stuff in the lead up to the abolition of slavery, which of course was a couple of hundred years anyway in the lead up. And people were saying, okay, maybe we shouldn't just let them all free. We need to scale it down. So, we only have this many slaves each, or, they have certain rights, but not all the rights. It's either slavery is either right or wrong. You don't get to say, let's scale it down. It's fundamentally evil to be discussing it. And I get roped into it all the time. I'm always talking about, oh yeah, this politician is this and this. It'll be much better. But the truth is, it's all wrong. I mean, you're just talking about scales, and by justifying a little bit of it, it's no different to justifying a whole lot. I mean, you can just move at any time. Then you just say, oh well, if it's okay there, it's okay to make it bigger, make it smaller. Depending on whatever the whims of the moment are. So, so just to finally. To sum up, if government is so bad, or if a country would be much better without a government, then how come no country on earth does it? It just so happens that people who run governments and people who are in government positions kind of like the whole world domination thing. They kind of like taking over land and being in charge. So saying that, if a country without rape would be so great, then how come we don't have any countries without rape? They're criminals. This is the point. It's the very point is that, this is what these people do. This is what psychopaths do and manipulative people do. They want to get stuff. They want to manipulate people. They derive pleasure from manipulating people. And the sooner we kind of own up to that, the better. Now, again, I just want to say that, I've been owning up to this a long time. and being quite frustrated with people until it was recently enough I caught, oh my goodness, you all know, you're all much brighter than me. Everyone knows this stuff already, but you just pretend like you don't. So it really kind of takes me off. So if people could just be a little more honest, be absolutely the most sweetest thing in the world. Obviously, people listening right now, I think you're, and there's obviously a lot more people out there who are just being exposed to this stuff for the first time. I'm actually not really criticizing anybody listening or whatever. I don't want to, get that out of whack. But just, my goodness. I mean, just people need to not lie. I mean, that's pretty much that would be enough. I mean, if you could say, yeah, I want government because it pays for my kids. I want government because I get to have a life now. When, after I've had my kids, I can put them in school and not have to put up with them. I can have my career back. That's why I want government ultimately. I benefit from that. I want government because I'm simply mortified that someone has been stealing from me all my life and I'm never going to get that money back. And I want to have some purpose. Say, that's going to, you want to have a reason why you're being stolen from. Okay, and just own up to it. Just tell the truth. That'd be great. It'd just be great if people could do that, and be done with it. Because you're kind of taking my money too, and my kids' money, and I'm not a huge fan of that. So again, I really want to encourage people. Share this. Let's get a discussion going. We really need to talk about this stuff. Let's get a discussion going. And it's been so great, the positive feedback. A lot of positive feedback, a little negative. I expected far more negative. I'm really surprised by how many people out there already are on board with this stuff. But again, I don't know why I should be. Because it is fairly obvious, really. But because it's obvious. Not to people like myself. As I said, it took me forever to figure this stuff out. But a lot of people already understand this stuff. So I'm glad to be caught up to everyone else right now. And I just really want to encourage you to please get this discussion going. Send comments in email, keep the tweets coming, keep the Facebook messages coming. Absolutely, every time my inbox lights up for Counterintuition, I get excited. I want to see, I really want arguments. I don't even mind any negative stuff, as long as you're not just calling names or whatever. You have an actual discussion. If you violently disagree with me, just send the mail. Send mail, send tweets, whatever. So head on over to counterintuition.com where you'll find loads more podcasts, articles. You find my book there you get on Amazon, What's Civic Duty. And looking forward to checking in with you again soon in the next few days. And we'll get to those comments at some point too. So thanks again. Bye.